What do we have here, John?
Well, we've got the six-wheeled Range Rover, the best vehicle in the world. Don't you think, Ed?
I've had some bad experiences with the old Rover. It was an interesting and unexpected journey in every possible way, but it is now headed back west, where I think it belongs.
It's going back home with me. Yeah, I think some of those gray hairs may have come from the Rover itself.
That's a Rover hair.
So the Rover's coming home to California. Now, I'm going to make a wager with this man right here that I bet you I can make this so you like it.
That's a tall order.
I know.
Because I don't know that I've ever hated a car so much. I'll be honest. I love looking at it. And now that you've, relieved me of it, having its finality has been very, very nice.
Yeah.
And so there is a lot to like about not having it. But I do wish you the very best. But I mean, it's very, very slow.
Yes.
It does not stop very well.
No.
It won't go up hills.
No.
It won't go off-road.
No.
It is a pretend six-wheel drive.
Yes.
It's kind of falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
We almost broke a wheel off.
Yeah.
And it doesn't go in sand. We learned that.
Nope.
So you're going to fix all of these things?
I believe I can fix all of this. And I believe I can fix it to a degree that you will be like, maybe I made a mistake getting rid of the six-wheel Range Rover. Or at least close enough that you lower the level from disdain and hate down to mild appreciation.
If you told me you were going to take the Brock Yates Audi out and beat Doug and Arnie's record, I would believe you more.
Well, there you have it. The challenge has been met, or not met. The challenge has been accepted. Yes?
Sure.
Okay. So the idea is we're going to do something cool with this. We're going to make it work, and then we're going to bring Ed out and see if I'm right and he's wrong.
I'm not wrong.
All right, the Range Rover is back in California. I'm as excited as I was when we first got it off the boat from France a couple of years ago. I love this truck. Now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take it in the garage, we're gonna see what we got, and we're gonna make a plan on how to make Ed Bolian love this Range Rover. We'll take it inside. Okay, we got the old girl inside the garage. She fits. She should fit because this is where we turned her into an overlander a couple years ago. Now it's time to see what's going on with it and where we're going with it. Now, I have to admit, full disclosure, that this thing was running really badly when we got it in. In fact, we barely got it off the truck. So we brought it in, we took a look at it. The cap and rotor were corroded. We cleaned those up, still wasn't running right. And finally, we checked fuel pressure, and it only had 12 pounds of fuel pressure. Now, this fuel injection system requires about 40 pounds of fuel pressure, which explains maybe over the Shoot a Car trek that we were losing fuel pressure, which might have been one of the reasons that it wasn't as fast as that at least Ed needed it to be. So we dropped the fuel tank, put in a new fuel pump, and it's running great now, probably better than it ever has. But what we did pull out, connected to the fuel pump, which I had actually never seen before, maybe some GM guys have, was one of these. Now, the fuel pump sits inside the tank, and then a little hose comes up, and it goes into here, then that comes out of the top of the pump and to the front of the car. What this is was called a pulsator. And what it does, it looks like the top of a brake master cylinder, an older car. But what it is, fuel goes in there, comes out there, it's got a little diaphragm there, and it absorbs the shock wave of the pump so that it sounds quieter, is one of the explanations I read about it, and that it smooths out the pulse of the flow of the fuel to the fuel injection. Most people don't use it. It was used in General Motors cars, late 80s, early 90s, and they got rid of it. So like Corvettes and things like had these in it. But every form I read was like, they're horrible. Now, they also leak. So this might have been leaking, so the pressure coming out of the pump wasn't getting all the way to the front because it was bleeding off inside of this thing. So we got rid of it. The truck runs great now. Not great enough not to do some work to it, but good enough to test it, which is what we're going to do pretty soon. Now let's look real quick at the list that Ed Bolian left for me, right? Okay, this is right out of his mouth what he thought was bad about the old girl. First, Ed's Rover list. Very, very slow. Now, I'm going to see how we can address each of these things. Very, very slow. LS swap. Now, they make an LS swap kit for this. A couple different companies do it. They've, over the years, plenty of LSs have gone in Land Rovers and Range Rovers and all kinds of sorts of things. So I don't think that's going to be the hardest thing. I buy the kit, kind of like what we did for the ambulance, and put it in. And with 350 horsepower, this should be quite manageable to drive. So I think we'll take care of very, very slow. Doesn't stop very well. It's got 6-wheel disc brakes. We'll take a look at it. Maybe we can improve that somehow. I'm not sure exactly how, but we'll address that as well. We'll see how fast we can stop. Won't go up hills. Well, that's part of being very, very slow. It just didn't have the power to get up hills. So the new LSs have quite a bit of torque. You know, over 300 foot-pounds, 350 foot-pounds of torque should be great for that truck. If we can get higher than that, that'd be awesome. Won't go off-road. Well, that has to do with the four-wheel drive system. Now, all Range Rovers, technically, before you put the diff locks on, are one-wheel drive, and that's it. So it's going to spin unless you put the diff on. So a couple times in Car Trek, the diffs weren't locked and we got stuck, but for the most part, it climbs okay, but it just doesn't go off-road well. I think that's a combination of power and traction. How do we fix the traction? Well, we make it a 6x6. Right now it's a 6x4. That rear axle is just a tag axle. It's just hanging out there. It has the ability to have a drive shaft put to it, but you need to get the power from that front one to the rear one. We're going to figure that out. There's a company in England that makes a kit for it when they make 6-wheel Defenders over there. We're going to talk to them. We're going to talk to a local company, see if maybe we can fabricate something here, like a gearbox that sends the power up and over the rear differential and then down to the tag axle. So we'll see. We'll see. We'll figure it out. That's going to be a lot of engineering. The LS swap's going to be simple in comparison, but I think 6-wheel drive, so that gets to us to pretend 6-wheel drive. We'll make it a real 6-wheel drive vehicle, which will be awesome. That much traction with that kind of power is going to make it quite formidable off-road. Kind of falling apart. Well, we had like 30 days to get this thing ready for Car Trek. We spent most of that time making it look like an Overlander so that when he showed up, he had the baddest rig out there. So we spent the time building the rack and the front and the suspension and everything else we did to it. It could use a little bit of love. All the squeaks, like when you see in the video, it's full of dust and all of that, that's real. The thing was leaking. It's got holes in it. We'll patch all that up. We'll make it civilized inside. In fact, perhaps even some air conditioning, which would be nice. Doesn't go in sand. Well, that goes back to not going off-road and being pretty slow. Sand requires power and it requires traction. So I think with an LS in there, we will definitely have the power. 6x6, we'll have the traction. It'll be awesome. Now, what's in there now is the Rover 3.9 V8. That engine is quite capable. And back in the day, if you had any British car that wasn't an Aston Martin or Rolls Royce, you needed a V8. That's what they put in it. I'm just getting a little geeky here and getting off track because that engine was in the early P6 and P5 Rovers, obviously in the Range Rover. Originally, that motor was an Oldsmobile and Buick V8. It was a 215 cubic inch aluminum V8 they used in the early 60s. Rover bought it from them and they started putting it in everything. So it was in the MG GT V8. It was in the Triumph TR8. It was in TVRs. It's been modified and hot rodded. It's kind of the British version of the American Chevy 350, the ubiquitous 350, which you can put in any hot rod you can find. It's in every hot rod you see. So that was the British V8. It was originally a 3.5 liter, then a 3.9 liter, then a 4 liter. This is the 3.9, about 200 horsepower when it was new, not anymore. So getting rid of that engine, which I still think is a good engine, putting in the LS, 6-wheel drive, I think we're onto something. Now, in order to be pseudo-scientific, what we have to do is test it and see what it is doing right now. So the two tests I want to do today is one, I want to do a hill climb up the back of my property, up the same hill we drove the Safari 928 up in the last video, and we're going to time it up the hill, and I want to do a 0 to 60 on it, even though that's not what it's about, but to get kind of a parameter of where it should be. And in order to give some kind of context, and just for fun, we're going to run it against a Cannonball Ambulance, which has an LS swap already in it, probably the same LS I'll put in here, which is the LQ9, 340 horsepower, 390 foot-pounds of torque. It's a great engine, unless we find something even cooler. So we're going to run head-to-head the stock Range Rover with its 3.9 Rover V8 versus the 50-year-old Cannonball Ambulance with its '05 Cadillac Escalade motor. So let's head to the hill and start our test right now. All right, so now it's time to test the Range Rover on its first skill, and that's climbing a hill, which I don't expect it to do very, very well. We are gonna lock the diffs and we're gonna get it into at least 4-wheel drive and see how fast we can go to the top. So let's do it. I don't know. This thing's running really well. So I didn't think that was that bad. With an LS in it, with another 150 horsepower, that will be tremendous. But I was kind of impressed with Range Rover now that it's running better. But now we'll see what the Ambulance can do in comparison. Should be interesting. All right, now it's the Ambulance's turn. Now the Ambulance is a 1971 GMC Ambulance, about the same length, about the same weight. But I've got a LQ9 LS out of a 2005 Escalade in here, and about 340 horsepower, about 390 foot-pounds of torque, a lot more than the Rover, but it is 2-wheel drive, limited slip rear end, so I don't expect it to be that much faster, but I do expect it to be faster. I just don't know if I'm going to have the traction to get up the hill. So let's find out what an old Ambulance can do climbing up a dirt hill. Ready? Here we go. Okay, that was way too much fun. That was something when we built the Ambulance I would never have expected to have done, but that was a blast. So we've got two completely different trucks, about the same size. This one having about 150 more horsepower than this one pretty easily, but this one 4-wheel drive and built for the off-road, this one not. So what were the times? The old Rover, running as best as it ever has, did it in 27 seconds, 0.71, which is 100% respectable, and I'm really impressed. The Ambulance, even faster, believe it or not, even though we don't have the traction, and did it in 23 seconds, 0.20. And that's fantastic. I'm really impressed by the Ambulance, how she did. I'm impressed by both of them, actually. They both did really well for what they are. So what do we do next? Now we take them out on the road and see if, you know, the 0 to 60 times or whatever we can do. I live in the mountains, so I don't have a lot of flat area here. So we'll see what we can do as far as 0 to 60 or maybe a quarter mile to see what we could do with both of them. This one is kind of the benchmark. Hopefully this one, the Rover, is as fast as this or faster when we're done swapping and I'll listen to it. But we'll find out soon enough. So let's go take them on the open road. All right, we're on the road. We're gonna find out what the Range Rover can do 0 to 60. Now, at a stock Range Rover from 1989, which is what the drivetrain's from, is 11.6 seconds. Now, I don't expect it to even be close to that. We're dragging an extra set of wheels, a lot of extra weight. So if we can get to 60 miles an hour in the stretch that we've got here, I'll be just excited about that. We'll see how fast it is right now. Ready? Okay, definitely not the fastest vehicle I've ever driven, but respectable, not quick at all. But we're talking about, you know, a pretty big truck with a lot of extra stuff attached and a 200 horsepower V8 in it. So it's not going to be staggeringly fast. It hopefully will be faster with an LS. Now, and it's probably gonna be predictable, let's go take out the ambulance and see what she does 0 to 60, and we'll compare the times. Now it's the Cannonball Ambulance's turn. Now we've got the LS in this, so it should be interesting to see how fast she'll go. She's a tow rig, not really geared for quarter mile, 0 to 60 stuff, but I've always been interested to see how fast she'll go. One thing I know, she sounds great. So at least I'll sound good going down the road in the mighty ambulance. So let's find out right now. All right, that was a lot of fun. This thing's pretty quick, and God, it sounds good. I love the LS sound. So what are our times? What's the tail of the tape? The old Range Rover, a stock 89 Range Rover back in the day, did 0 to 60 in 11.6 seconds. This old girl, 19.5 seconds 0 to 60. So not terribly fast. Kind of like Daihatsu fast right now. With an LS, I think we can improve on that considerably. The good old ambulance, now believe it or not, the 05 Escalade this motor came out of did 0 to 60 in 8.4 seconds. The ambulance just did 0 to 60 in 8.4 seconds. So it must be about the same weight or something like that, but I mean, it's dead on the same 0 to 60 time, which for a 50-year-old ambulance, that is just fantastic. I love this truck. I love both these trucks. I can't wait to put this motor in this truck. It's going to be awesome. Now, where do we go from here? Well, we start on the work, and that's going to be a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of manpower, but I'm looking forward to it. We're gonna take out the engine out of this. We're gonna find out how to do the 6-wheel drive in the rear, and I'll keep you up to date with new videos as we work on it, as we tear it apart, as we find equipment for it, as we build it. This should be a fun project over the next few months. So thanks for watching. Thanks for being a fan of these awesome vehicles. Please like and subscribe. Please go to my store in the description below. There'll be a link for you. You can buy a shirt. You can help support the channel, help support buying a V8 for this thing. And if you know anybody who wants to sponsor the channel, I'm open. I haven't stopped any of these videos to talk about, you know, underwear or deodorant or something like that. So I try to bring them to you as best I can, but I could use a little bit of money, would be nice. So have a great day. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.